Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4. It's called Transcendental Knowledge. Text number 10. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So I'll just read the Sanskrit. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upasrita bhavavo jnana tapasa bhutamad bhavamagata. Translation. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Srila Prabhupada's purport.
Yeah, it's a special mind. Very active.
Okay, thank you. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. In the material concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep this same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such, materialistic men, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too material absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. When they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into the impersonal void. Generally, they compare the living entities to the bubbles of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. This last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. One has to get rid of all three stages of attachment to the material world: negligence of spiritual life, fear of a spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that arises from frustration in life. To get free from these three stages of the material concept of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by a bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional service. The last stage of devotional life is called Bhava, or transcendental love of Godhead. According to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1:4-15-16, the science of devotional service, Adao Shradatata Sadhu Sangam-ta Bhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivritisya Tato Nishta Ruchistataha. So, everybody switch off their mobile phones, please. Okay? Thank you. Atasaktis tato bhavas tata prima pyutan chati. Sadhakanam ayam premna pradurbhave bhavet karma. Which means, in the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness, which is matured in bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. Vitaraga bhaya kroda man maya mam pashrita bhava jnana tapasa puta madhava. This is Krishna talking. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. There are so many translations of the Bhagavad Gita. It's one of the most published books in the world. So how is it that we are reading this one and not any one of the others? Someone has a good theory? Yes, Prabhu.
Because of the purport you just read.
Because of the purport, yes? Good answer. It's like this. The person who has translated this book from Sanskrit, I don't know, how many of you know Sanskrit perfectly here? Raise your hand. Not perfectly, but almost. Okay, good. So he translated from Sanskrit to English, and because these things, it's about spiritual life, philosophy, not the easiest thing to understand, he also kindly gave explanation. So, let's say that you want to learn about brain surgery, how to do surgery in the brain. And we have two books. We have one book written by a brain surgeon, and we have another book written by a plumber. You know what a plumber is? They do plumbing. They fix the bathtub and the sinks and stuff like that. So, if you want to learn about brain surgery, which book you want to read? Raise your hand. Who will read the book of the plumber? Nobody? Okay. Who wants to read the book of the brain surgeon? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this is a book of a soul surgeon, Srila Prabhupada, who knows the philosophy in and out, and the science of Krishna consciousness as it is being presented here. Right? One may ask, why spiritual life? Well, isn't it better to have a cozy, comfortable situation in this world with, as many TV channels as possible, and good eating, and good sleeping, and good sex life, and good everything like that? Yeah. The thing is, we want what is best for us. We want what is best for our family, if we have one. And to know what is actually best for us, we really have to know who we are, or what we are. Because if we don't know that, if we don't know who we are, how could we know what is best for us? So this is one of the things we learn from the Bhagavad Gita. We learn that the human being is a compound creature. You know what a compound is? Compound is like, let's say you have the metal brass. It looks like gold. You make trumpets and saxophones and things out of brass. But it's actually not a metal in itself. It's a compound consisting of 65% of copper, which is a pure metal, and 35% of zinc, which is another metal. So when you mix them, melt them, it becomes brass. It's a compound. It looks like gold actually, but it's not gold, it's brass. So the human creature is a compound of the material body. This is what you can see here, made of different elements. The kind of vehicle which we use to move around and to get information and knowledge of the world and like that through the senses. That's one part of the compound, and the other compound is the source of consciousness, the source of the identity, the I in the body, and that is the soul. And the thing is, compared to brass, which consists of two metals, there is an ocean of difference between matter and spirit. So they are not equal. While matter is temporary, we have this body for X number of years, it's kind of not very intelligent, to be frankly speaking. We know something, but we don't know so much. And it's basically full of misery, especially when you get older. You get pains everywhere. If you get older, you can also get pains and you can die young. That's also possible. So matter is temporary, ignorant, and full of misery. Sometimes there's a little pause in the misery, and that pause we can interpret as there is some happiness in material life. But basically, it's not real happiness. There is something similar to what we can call liberation. If you're hungry, you're suffering from hunger. If you're thirsty, you're suffering from thirst. So if you get something to drink or something to eat, you feel relief. It's like liberation. Like, you're looking for a toilet. You're going in Copenhagen, and and then you find one, and then it's relief. It's not really happiness. It's relief from suffering, right? So you go from -100 to 0. You don't go from 0 to +100. If you want to go from 0 to +100, you have to know who you are and how to be happy. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita here is introducing the science of spiritual life. Why it's called a science? It's because by observation and experiment, you can verify a hypothesis. That's how science works. I used to study some science. And you start off, with a hypothesis. Let's say 50% of the Danish women are older than 30 years. That's a hypothesis. And then you do some science and you figure out, you get a lot of data. And then you figure out, well, it's not 30, it's actually 29, whatever. But you follow a scientific process. So the so-called hypothesis here is that if you go through all the stages listed here, Adar, Shraddha, Tata, Sadhu, Sangha, Bhajana, Kriya, etc., then you will develop love of Godhead. You may say, I don't believe that. Well, test it scientifically. Scientifically means you follow a process exactly as it has been described. You can't speculate, like, I don't ask all the ladies in Copenhagen and ask all the ladies in Roskilde or somewhere, but that's not the same thing. You have to follow the process. It's described in the book. Then you will verify scientifically that you will develop love of God and you will understand who you are, etc. So the problem here is that we may understand, spirit and matter, body and soul. Everybody speaks about it nowadays, so we may understand it in theory, but we don't really understand it fully. We don't realize it like this. We still are totally, completely convinced that I am this body, right? Okay, so if you think you're the body, let me challenge you. We bring up, it's an interesting example. You know what a chainsaw is? Yeah. So you saw your arm off, this, that, and both legs, and you put them in a basket over in that corner. We can give you some anesthesia first so it doesn't hurt so much. So then we ask you the question, where are you? What do you think? Any good answers? Am I here, the torso, or am I the legs or the arms, which is basically 50% of the material body over there? Where am I? What?
Here.
I'm here, yeah. I'm the torso, because the soul, maybe, after all this suffering, is still there, located in the heart region. Because this is the problem. We can see the material body. We can feel the hair, the legs, and all these things. So, yeah, this is me, We can't really see the soul or touch it, or, The body is here, like in this case, it's about, 70 kilograms of biological substance. Some blood and some mucus, some bones and skeleton and some other nasty substances with a thin layer of skin on top so that it's, you dare to look at it, at least still, right until I'm 10 years older, I don't know, maybe you don't want to look at me then. But if you just take the substances of the body, it's not very nice. And they smell bad too, blood and urine and stool and, all these tissues. This is the body. Where is the soul? Well, it's explained in the scripture that the soul, you can't measure it materially. The size of 1/10,000th times 1/10,000th the tip of something, 100,000th size of the tip of a hair, however the size of the tip of a hair is. So it's so small, you can see it. Still, it is the source of the identity, the feeling of I, and the source of consciousness. which is pervading the material body, which enables you to maneuver it, etc. Even modern science concluded that every cell in this body is being replaced. You know, just like you lose hair and you lose nails and some things of the skin falls out. Every 7 year, approximately every 7 year, you have an entirely new body, new cells, because all the other ones are gone, you know, lying on the floor, in the bed, or in the toilet, or in wherever they are. But the soul never changes. You have the same feeling of I, since you were like a little girl, a little boy, and now you're older. It's still me. I'm sitting, looking out through this, you know, feeling and making sounds and like that. So it's very convenient to identify this, what Krishna calls a yantra rudhani maya, a machine made of material energy, you know. And sometimes there is a male machine and there's a female machine, and there's some, oh, what a nice female machine, oh, what a strong male machine. And then, you know, you can see like this, when you see the building sites, they have this caterpillars and diggers. They go around, they dig some earth and they go and pull it off. There's like one male machine and one female. Oh, nice machine. Oh, yes. You know, like this. I'm this body, she's this body. Why not? You know? So there is the core of the problem that we identify, and then we become attached to what we believe. This is my body and my belongings. This is my watch, and this is my wife, and this is my child, and this is my house, and all these things, which actually has nothing to do with me as the spirit soul whatsoever. But just like seaweeds, by chance, we have been, you know, collected on the ocean waves for a limited period of time. I used to remind my family at home, you know, that, remember, once upon a time, I didn't know who you were, my dear wife. You weren't in my life. And it's going to be like that in the future. One time, you know, I'm not going to be here for you, and you're not going to be here for me. Or the children, they come, 9 months pregnant, and say, bloop, oh, little baby boy, you know. And now he's 25, he goes to law school. Hey, so who is this? Yeah, it's my son. So at one point, we're not going to have the family anymore. But this is the illusion. We get attached, and then we try to enjoy, you know, my family's there to make me happy. Oh, these little kids, and oh, my wife, she should cook palatable dishes to, you know, satisfy my tongue and like this. But it doesn't really happen, because real happiness has nothing to do with the body, nothing to do with the mind. It has to do only with the soul, and actually the soul's eternal relationship to its origin, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's where we came from, and that's who we are part of, integrated part. We kind of forgot, that's why we're here. We kind of forgot God, Krishna. And if we want to know exactly who we are and what we are, there's a very beautiful verse in one of the scriptures called Chaitanya Charitamrita, saying Jivara, that's us, Jiva, living entity, Svarup, eternal, constitutional position, function, essence, Krishna Nitya Das. We are Krishna's eternal servants. So we are serving now, not Krishna directly, but we are serving his external energy, we are serving his matter, we're serving other material bodies, other manifestations of his opulences, but we forgot about direct service to Krishna. And that's why our founder, the divine person who translated this book for us, he came to America in 1965 with a vision. He wanted to enlighten people about their true identity and the true connection with the Supreme Personality of God, to make them wake up from, this is like an illusory dream, just like you dream at night. We're actually in the middle of a living dream where we think we are this body, and you know, I'm Danish, I'm Swedish, I'm whatever I am. So he came after a troublesome journey over the Atlantic Ocean. So in 1965 he came, and he sat down in the wintertime on a park bench in a park in Manhattan, speaking to one Mr. Rubin, was his name, was a subway conductor, Prabhupada was all alone, and he told Mr. Rubin, well, I have temples, I have books, there are devotees. We're just separated in time, she says, separated in time. This is what the vision means. Somebody who knows what he wants. We highly recommend everybody to think a little bit about, what's my vision in life? What do I want to do? Am I just looking forward to next week's Premier League match to have a few beers with the boys, or what is the actual mission I have? But why am I existing? So then 10 years later, Prabhupada had all these things. He had temples all over the world. He had a lot of devotees, he had a lot of books, and actually he explained how this was possible. He said once that on a morning walk in Mayapur in 1976, he said that I'm a businessman. He used to run his business before. He was a pharmacist, so he knew how things were. You need 4 things, he said, 4 things. You need land, you need capital, you need labor, and you need good organization.